G'day and welcome to this week's episode of Reality Check Q&A, that opportunity in the week where you get the chance to ask me the curly questions. And to help me do that is Megan Orada. Welcome, Megan. Nice to see you here.
Ross, great to see you today. Just like
I,
last
sh-
week.
I
Oh,
should
go ahead.
actually sort of say before we start that I have been as sick as a dog, Megan. I've had COVID. So if I'm a little slow off the mark today, I plead the excuse. I've got a doctor's certificate to prove it. I have been very ill. So please be kind to me.
Yes, well, Ross, we are all glad that you're feeling better. We will probably not take it easy on you. Um, like normal. But we do need to start this week, just like last week, with breaking news. So, get this policy director for the White House Office of Science and Technology. His name is Michael Kratsios. He said today about US technology, I'm going to quote him here: "Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space, they leave distance annihilated." Let's listen into a bit of his sound.
Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space. They leave distance annihilated, cause things to grow, and improve productivity.
Okay, Megan. Well, I would love to think that Michael Kratsios, the White House Science and Technology Advisor, a former Undersecretary of Defense, a former Chief Technology Officer for the United States, I would love to be able to say with absolute bold assertion that he's talking there about retrieved alien technology and he's about to blow all in a big disclosure moment. But wiser heads are suggesting to me that one should view his comments metaphorically, that essentially he's firstly not a trained engineer or scientist. He's somebody who comes from a policy background. He is the former US Chief Technology Officer from 2019 to 2021. He's also briefly acted as the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering from 2020 to 2021. And he was also, intriguingly, Chief of Staff to Peter Thiel at Palantir. And he's had a huge role in AI. But a lot of people are emphasizing to me that his speech was essentially, and I think it was a great speech, his speech was talking about how weird it is that the US has really not made any significant technological advances equivalent to what we'd made up to that period in the 50s, 60s, and 70s in the same way in the past 50 years. And he talks, I think it's worth including some of his earlier comments. A gap lies between our moment and the speed of transformation America experienced mid-century. Progress has slowed. Yes, large language models astonish us, rockets still turn our eyes upwards, and satellites envelop the globe. But as we look forward to America's 250th birthday celebration next year, our progress today pales in comparison to the huge leaps of the 20th century. Consider the country of 50 years ago. And he's right. And you know, the interesting thing is people inside the legacy program, they tell me that this is why they're frustrated. They say that this is why they want the United States government to tell the truth about the advanced technology that it has, because they believe that there have been advances made. But if you look at even science and technology developments in aviation and space tech, we're still using space rockets that were essentially designed by the Nazis in the 1940s. I mean, really, we haven't come very far at all on the official public record. And so I guess I do think, in all likelihood, Michael Kratsios was speaking metaphorically. And even if he was alluding in some way to some secret program that he's been briefed into, he's obviously got the out. He can say, look, I was speaking metaphorically. I was speaking about, even when I'm talking about the ability to manipulate space and time, maybe he's talking about the extraordinary developments in hypersonics technology or quantum AI. I mean, there's any number of reasons that he could give to metaphorically explain what he was saying. So I think we've killed that one for the moment, at least, Megan. But believe me, everyone, I am chasing Michael Kratsios for the opportunity to do an interview with him because I do think he would be a very good interview.
Ross, we definitely agree. And we will go to the next question. Speaking of technology, we've got James Kirk. Dear Mr. Coulthart, I applaud your statement that there may be many alien civilizations visiting our planet. Do you think a technology can be developed to mimic the human brain to summon certain types of UAPs or UFOs? And could this technology be quantum based?
So, do I think a technology exists, or do I think a technology could be created that could mimic the human brain to summon UAPs? Is that the basic question?
Correct.
Well, I think the point of Skywatcher is that there's already a technology they claim that exists that can do that, and that's psionic technology. So we don't need to develop a technology, it already exists, James T. Kirk. I think I've seen psionic technology developed, shown and demonstrated, and I think it's real. I can't explain it. I don't know how it works. There's also the dog whistle, which is the electromechanical signaling device. And obviously, Skywatch is being slightly coy and revealing the full extent of what it knows about the dog whistle. And I can't blame them because, frankly, let's point this out to people. If it is the case that this device can summon UAPs, you really don't want to summon a UAP unless you know what you're doing. So yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to replicate the human brain in order to be able to do this. I think the human brain's already capable of doing it.
Okay, Russ, I'm going to skip ahead to a couple questions to kind of play off what you just said. This is from at the GFNPC. Do you think it's safe that we summon them? What exactly is the message the NIH are receiving during the dog whistle? What if they get upset that they keep getting called?
Those are all incredibly good questions. And if people watch my interview with Jake Barber and Matthew Pines that we did about 2 weeks ago on Reality Check, we actually went into a lot of this where, we explored with Jake what they do. And ultimately, one of the things that I think Jake explained, which I'd love to hear more about, by the way, is that they have an oath that everybody swears on the area, on the range, before they actually do the summoning. They've also vowed at Skywatcher not to act offensively against NHI, which I think is absolutely crucial. That's a distinction from what I understand the United States government has been doing in collusion with private aerospace. As shocking as it may sound, the United States has secretly, the military has secretly been using high pulse microwave weapons to down UAP craft that it has been summoning using both psionics and the electromechanical dog whistle. I really think that's outrageous. Wouldn't it be terrible if our first engagement with a non-human intelligence was that humans acted offensively against a highly advanced intelligence? And what does it say about the benevolence of that intelligence that even though it's had that done to it, it hasn't wiped us out?
Absolutely. Let's go to our next question. This is from email. Kimberly Mackey sent this in. Hi, Ross. I would love to hear your thoughts on why private citizens with funding for places like Skywatcher and Skinwatcher Ranch have such great success, yet taxpayer funded places like NASA and other groups, which receive grants to research space, are not achieving the same success. Could they be keeping the public in the dark for more funding? Or could it be that these phenomenon are not from space, but from here within Earth?
Okay, there's two kind of questions in there. Firstly, I'll deal with the latter one first. I think there is a very high likelihood that part of the phenomenon that we're talking about is intraterrestrial, that it's from this planet, perhaps in another dimension in this planet, or perhaps deep underwater on this planet and out of sight of humanity. But I think there is a possibility that at least some of what explains the phenomenon is here with us in some way. What was the first part of the question? Forgive me, I'm still a bit
Yeah,
dopey.
absolutely. Why do places like Skywatcher and Skinwatcher Ranch, who have private citizens with private funding, why are they having so much success when places like NASA that are funded by
Oh,
taxpayers,
yeah, okay.
they're not really
Gotcha.
seeing as much success?
Okay, I think NASA knows a hell of a lot more about the phenomenon than it prefers to let on. Now, it's very complicated, this, because I am not saying that the senior leadership at NASA knows everything. I've been in the weird situation where, without naming him, I've been able to speak to an extremely senior person who served in a very senior role at NASA. And they have assured me convincingly that they were not read in to any legacy UAP retrieval and reverse engineering program. But I'm aware from my own sources, I even know the name of the person in NASA, and I've passed that name on to the person who I was talking to, who is allegedly the gatekeeper inside NASA, who controls all legacy program issues inside NASA. The program's very clever. They don't use necessarily the top people to run their operation. They do keep a very close eye on nominally civilian governmental organizations like NASA to make sure they don't stumble across something that might blow their cover. And so they have people inserted, like moles, if you like, to keep an eye on what's going on. And I am persuaded that, yes, NASA has been sanitizing photographs and video to disguise, in some cases, things that have been recorded. I take particularly close interest, for example, in some of the space shuttle missions, notably STS-48, that I'm doing an awful lot of work on at the moment. For those who don't know STS-48, go to YouTube, put that in and have a look at it. It shows an object clearly appearing to avoid a flash of light from the planet and then zooming off into outer space after the flash of light. Now, certain NASA debunker skeptics, self-styled NASA spokespeople who aren't really, have asserted that those are space debris of some kind, perhaps ice particles from the thrusters on the shuttle. That does not bear out. And I've had good cause from recent sources that have got in touch with me to develop the view that there has been obscuring of photographs and videos inside NASA. But to suggest that this has been coordinated at a very high level inside NASA is another thing entirely. The legacy program is much, much cleverer than that. And I do believe that there are individuals in NASA who are aware of retrieved non-human technology. And indeed, I've spoken to some of them who are willing to tell me off the record that they do believe there is a cover-up. But I think the issue with NASA is quite complicated because I think it's a well-meaning institution that has been egregiously misled.
All right, Ross, we will go to the next question. This is from @CarolLong. I know you love this topic. What happened to the drone sightings in the USA and other parts of the world? The news on these seems to have stopped suddenly.
Okay, well, if you believe the official narrative is that the drones all went away and that we were all deluding ourselves in a hyperbolic misunderstanding, and that these were largely normal flights flying in and around New Jersey, and that people were misidentifying normal, regular aircraft and drones for objects that were anomalous. Now, our NewsNation correspondent, Rich McHugh, and you might want to use a segment from what Rich showed us, he was out at sea with, I think, a section of the US Coast Guard. Actually, no, he wasn't out at sea, he was on the beach after they got back in from being on the ocean. And he recorded an extraordinary interview, Megan, with people who had been out on the ocean and seen anomalous objects, indubitably anomalous objects. Moreover, I know, because I spoke to them at the time that they were doing it, that the Skywatcher team, including Jake Barber, were deployed over the Picatinny Arsenal in New Jersey in December. And it's interesting because Jake Barber has now confirmed on the record what he'd confirmed to me off the record, which is that they did see anomalous objects over the Picatinny Arsenal, which is one of the most sensitive weapons installations in that part of the United States. It's located in northern New Jersey. So I've actually promised some Irish friends of mine that I would use the word bollocks, and I'm going to say bollocks to the whole claim that these drones can be prosaically explained. It's a cover-up. Somebody in the US government is lying, and frankly, there's not a lot we can do about it, because the White House position, of course, is that these are FAA authorized drones, and that frankly does not survive scrutiny. It's complete bollocks. There is no basis at all to the suggestion that the FAA authorized these supposed incursions by authorized research drones. They've never provided any evidence to substantiate that there were authorized research flights, and I suspect that the recent announcement that the FAA would be conducting research drone flights over New Jersey is an ex post facto attempt to justify the bullshit line that they've perpetuated for the last few months. I can tell you that the people of New Jersey and their political representatives aren't buying it. I've also spoken more recently to certain people in the police force there who tell me they're not buying it either. They know what they saw.
Okay, Ross, and I will make sure to add in Rich McEwen NewsNation's video that you were referring to, and I can link to some of those episodes that we did below for people as well if they want to check them out. We will move on to @NewBotany. Back in the 40s until recently, most of the UAPs seen could be described as flying saucers. Now we have all kinds of peculiar devices that have been documented by Skywatcher, none of which are consistent with the original saucer description. Why is that?
I don't think Skywatcher's in a position yet to be able to definitively say that it has identified flying saucers, but I'll bet that eventually that comes into the classes of objects that they say that they see. One of the issue with what we've called flying saucers in the past is if you're looking at a lenticular object at a distance, what does it look like? It looks like a cigar. So unless you've seen that object in profile, on its side, or moving in the air in a way that allows you to see its full three-dimensional shape, I think there's a possibility that what the eye perceives is different from what the object is shaped like. I'm certainly getting a lot of people who are telling me that they're seeing anomalous objects that conform to a flying saucer shape. And I'd also point people's attention to the fact that one of the objects that the Skywatcher team say they're seeing is the manta ray. So that is essentially a lenticular, slightly triangular shaped object that's slightly saucer-like. I mean, we just don't know what these objects are. We don't know how the technology works. Maybe they have the capacity to morph themselves in some way, depending on where they are in what kind of atmosphere. I have no idea. There's certainly been, I think, an abundance of reports over the years, going back decades, to suggest that whatever these UAP are, they're capable of changing themselves in some way. So, no, I'm not ruling out the possibility that flying saucers will eventually conform to the conventional idea of a flying saucer shape. We just don't know yet enough to know one way or the other.
Okay, thank you, Ross. We have time for one more. This is going to come from @UptownSaturday. Ross and Megan, renowned remote viewer Pat Price claimed a vast underground extraterrestrial base exists beneath Mount Zeil in Australia's Northern Territory near Alice Springs. Given your somewhat relative proximity, what details can you provide about this intriguing assertion?
I've been asked about this one before, and it's a great question. And look, I've found the CIA records that refer to this. So it is true. During a CIA-sponsored Stargate program investigation using remote viewing, which of course the Pentagon denies the efficacy of, so why on earth did they spend millions of dollars doing the program? There's a certain idiocy to the claims that there's no basis to this psionic attitude, because frankly, they wouldn't have spent the money unless they knew it worked. There was a remote view, and in fact, it's not just one remote viewer that's done this. I was reading just a few days ago about a Lynn Buchanan who's done similar work as a remote viewer. And the claim is that there is some kind of alien base under a place called Mount Zeil, which, as it happens, is very close to Australia and America's most sensitive base outside the continental United States, Pine Gap, the so-called joint facility. If you were an alien species and you wanted to see what the US is really up to, you would go to a very, very remote corner of the Australian outback, slap bang in the middle of central Australia, near Uluru, otherwise known previously as Ayers Rock. And on the McDonnell Ranges, there is this weird place called Pine Gap, where the US has what is essentially a downlink for satellite feeds from orbit, which we know has been used to monitor for intercontinental ballistic missile launches, but I suspect also has other purposes. One of the most secret bases in the world. As for the claim of an alien base, which is about 16 kilometres further to the northwest, I understand, impossible to prove. Because I've been to Mount Zeil. I've walked around Mount Zeil, and just for my own fun when I was there, I had a damn good look. And there ain't nothing there. There's lots of lizards, lots of deadly snakes and spiders, lots of what we call scrub in Australia, small little bushes that are struggling to live against the incredibly hot sun. But frankly, I didn't see any aliens.
Well, that's unfortunate, Ross, but if anyone was going to find him, it was going to be you. So thank you for trying.
No problem at all.
Those are all the hardball questions I have for you today, Ross. I just want to remind people that you can email your questions to us, realitycheck@newsnationnow.com.
And hopefully, thank you very much, Megan. Hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions with more lucidity next week. I am still struggling. I hope none of you get this COVID. It has really knocked me for six. Take echinacea and a good rum toddy.
Yeah. Emphasis on the rum toddy. Thanks, Ross.
See ya.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And please don't forget to click that red subscribe button to ensure you get more of News Nation's unbiased and fact-driven news coverage.